How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Thursday, Yom Hamishi. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Stephen in New Hampshire, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Sharon in New Jersey, Melissa in Great Neck, New York, Yehuda in South Carolina, Shandar in the Bronx, Bella in Florida, Joe in the Inland Empire, Lucy in Minnesota, Paul in the Great Northwest, Josette in Colorado, Chaim in Florida, Ilanit in Maryland, Ella's in the house. Today on ER 15, the manna began to fall. Thank you. That's a great factoid. We've got a key DAF. This is an awesome one, very colorful, just pretty much all stories today, including the very, very famous story of how Rabbi Yochanan met Reish Lakish, and that's actually gonna be the first thing we do. So let's get into it. We got a good head start. On our DAF is page 84. Pei Daled. Here in chapter 7, continuing our discussion of Mishna number 1. In the chapter, we started talking about labor laws, but then we got into some colorful stories about Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. That's the famous Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And that led to some other stories of the sages. So we're more than halfway down on page 84a, and the Gemara relates. One day, Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan was a genius, absolute genius, the gadol, right, the great sage of his generation, and as we've learned, very handsome man, although large. Both large and handsome. So one day, Rabbi Yochanan was bathing in the Jordan River, and Reish Lakish saw him and jumped into the Jordan, pursuing him. At that time, Reish Lakish was the leader of a band of marauders, bandits. Rabbi Yochanan said, so before we get to that, just a little bit of background on Reish Lakish. I learned something yesterday that I hadn't known about him. So Reish Lakish is kind of a sage's nickname type of thing. His name was actually Shimon ben Lakish, Shimon the son of Lakish. He had some Torah education as a youngster. Probably even he was already a very promising pupil. but was not able to continue, perhaps because of financial problems in the family. And he ended up being sold or selling himself into slavery, a little unclear, but the form of that slavery was as a gladiator. Imagine. This was the Roman occupation of Israel. And he ended up, competing, working, fighting for the benefit of these Roman audiences and surviving, obviously. So he had that combination of intelligence, the kind of intelligence that you can use in a fight, as well as physical prowess. And he survived. He survived his time as a gladiator. And then he hooked up with some kind of, band of marauders, and they were working as bandits, okay? So when he sees Rabbi Yochanan bathing in the river, why does he jump in to pursue him? Because, what did he see? Just from behind, somebody with, I guess, long hair and beautiful face, and he thought that Rabbi Yochanan was a beautiful woman. That's why he jumped in. He wanted to meet this beautiful woman. So when he got there, he came around and said, "Oh, this is not the beautiful woman I thought. It's some dude." Turns out one of perhaps the great sage of Israel. So when Resh Lakish swims up to him in the river, Rabbi Yochanan said to Resh Lakish, "Your strength," the way you jumped in and swam over here, "your strength is fit for Torah study. You're misapplying your gift." Resh Lakish said to him, "Your beauty is fit for women." Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "If you return to the pursuit of Torah, I will give you my sister in marriage, who is more beautiful than I am." Resh Lakish accepted upon himself to study Torah, and subsequently Resh Lakish wanted to jump back out of the river to bring back his clothes, but he was unable to return, as he had lost his physical strength as soon as he accepted the responsibility to study Torah upon himself, or perhaps what was he going back to get those clothes, the clothes of a bandit? Maybe this was a gift from God, that he didn't have the strength to swim against the current and get that, where he might have, reconsidered this conversation that he just had with Rabbi Yochanan. So instead, he went out on the side of the river with Rabbi Yochanan and became his student. Now, there's a lot that's perplexing about this story. So Rabbi Yochanan is ready to offer his sister in marriage to some guy, who swam up in, perhaps some kind of impressive way. It must be that they knew who Reish Lakish was. They knew that this guy was some sort of a genius, some kind of charismatic fellow, some guy who was wasting his gifts in absolutely the wrong direction. And Rabbi Yochanan, recognized that potential in him immediately, and perhaps had long before recognized that potential, but now actually had an opportunity to speak with him. Rabbi Yochanan taught Resh Lakish Bible and taught him Mishna and turned him into a great man. Eventually, Resh Lakish became one of the outstanding Torah scholars of his generation. In fact, he became so great that even though he was Rabbi Yochanan's student, after all, Rabbi Yochanan rescued him from this life of crime, so he definitely came up as Rabbi Yochanan's student, but he excelled so much that he became Rabbi Yochanan's colleague, not just his disciple, but his colleague. And as we shall see, Reish Lakish was able to challenge Rabbi Yochanan in a very kind and admirable way, and for the purpose, of sharpening Rabbi Yochanan's understanding of the truth of Torah, of the law, but in a way that Rabbi Yochanan really appreciated that challenge. Eventually, Reish Lakish became one of the outstanding Torah scholars of his generation. Now, cut forward many, many years. One day, the sages of the study hall were engaging in a dispute concerning the following baraisa. With regard to the sword, the knife, the dagger, the spear, a hand sickle, and a harvest sickle, from when are they susceptible to tuma, to ritual impurity? Meaning, a utensil, it cannot become tameh until it is a finished utensil. So what they're asking is, when you're fabricating a knife, when you're fabricating a spear, when you're fabricating a sword, so when is it considered finished? Like if you have the shape of the metal, if you've got it attached to the handle, but you haven't sharpened it yet, right? Is that considered a finished sword, or is it still in the process of being manufactured? The difference being, if it's finished and it comes into contact with some source of tuma, of ritual impurity, the object becomes impure and it would have to be purified before it could be used. If it's not finished, then it is not susceptible to impurity. So that's the law that they were discussing in the study hall. And the Baraisa answers, well, the answer to that is it's from the time of the completion of their manufacture, which is the law with regard to metal vessels in general. But then, okay, well, when is it completed? So the sages inquired, and when is the completion of their manufacture? And Rabbi Yochanan says it is from when one fires these items in the furnace. Resh Lakish said it is from when one scours them in water. After they have been fired in the furnace, right, they get doused in water, which sort of hardens the metal, and it's an important step. So Reish Lakish, says, no, there's one more step. It's not enough that they go in the fiery furnace. They also have to be doused in the water. Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, I guess Rabbi Yochanan said, a bandit knows his banditry, i.e., you are an expert in weaponry because you were a bandit in your youth. Resh Lakish said to Rabbi Yochanan, what benefit did you provide me by bringing me close to Torah? There, among the bandits, they called me the leader of the bandits. And here, too, they call me the leader of the bandits. That's what they're going to call me now because you. Right now, it is absolutely prohibited to remind a convert that he was once not a Jew, and a Baal Tshuva, somebody who was, not a Torah Jew, who made, his repentance, made his teshuvah, and became an observant Jew, right? Like I did, right? So I can say that about myself, but you don't remind a Jew who was not an observant Jew, a Shabbat observant Jew, that once he was not that. It's prohibited. We've covered that a bunch of times because you humiliate them by reminding them that they were not that. So how could Rabbi Yochanan, publicly in front of other sages say, oh, well, yeah, he would know. He would know the law of weapons because he was once a bandit. I mean, it's such an unkind, seemingly offhand remark, and it's a prohibited remark. Rabbi Yochanan would know better. And so Rabbi Reish Lakish was hurt, right? And that's why he says, so what good did you do me by making me, elevating me, teaching me, making me a sage? And now, you're just calling me one of the bandits, despite, the 20 years of toil that I have made in learning to become a Torah scholar. What benefit did you provide me? Then I was called a leader of bandits. Now I'm called a leader of bandits. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, I provided benefit to you as I brought you close to God under the wings of the divine presence. Rabbi Yochanan was offended, which in turn affected Reish Lakish, who fell ill. What do you mean Rabbi Yochanan was offended? Reish Lakish was offended, right? So obviously there's parts of this dialogue that are missing, right? We don't have the whole story here. But there's a very interesting note that we have. Where is it? Where it explains... Okay, a bandit knows his banditry. Right? How could Rabbi Yochanan have made this comment? So many commentaries, this is a note from Rav Steinsaltz. Many commentaries ask, how could Rabbi Yochanan say this to Reish Lakish, as the Torah explicitly prohibits verbal mistreatment of others? Some explain that a principal teacher is allowed to berate his pupil for a constructive purpose. According to this interpretation, Resh Lakish replied that he had studied Torah prior to encountering Rabbi Yochanan. Consequently, Rabbi Yochanan could not be considered his principal teacher, and therefore he had no right to berate them. Others suggest, and I like this other interpretation better, others suggest Rabbi Yochanan spoke in a jocular fashion as a way of piquing the attention of the other sages. What he was saying was, we all know that Resh Lakish is the greatest sage in this generation, possibly second to me, but certainly greater than everyone else. He's my equal. I have elevated him, and it's an incredible thing that the guy who became, my equal, my colleague, and the two of us are the leaders of the generation. Look how far he came. It's incredible. That should inspire all of you that you can reach such great heights. You didn't start where he was, so you should be climbing even higher. He was saying it to inspire them, to pique their attention, and as a compliment to Reish Lakish. But we see you have to be so careful with your words, because maybe he was joking around, maybe he was doing it to be inspiring, but Reish Lakish was hurt, right? He wanted them to listen to the opinion of Reish Lakish, who was an expert in the matter at hand. But Reish Lakish misconstrued Rabbi Yochanan's intent, and he was upset by this remark. So then whatever Reish Lakish said next, it must have been enough to offend Rabbi Yochanan, right? He came back at him hard. Maybe there's a few lines missing here. At any rate, it became a quarrel, and a quarrel between them, tossing off insults in front of others. Very bad look, right? Very bad look for the Beis Midrash, for the house of study. So what happened? As a result of the quarrel, Rabbi Yochanan was offended, and this in turn affected Reish Lakish, and Reish Lakish fell ill. Reish Lakish fell ill. Rabbi Yochanan's sister, right? Remember he said, I will give you my sister to marry. So Rabbi Yochanan's sister, who was Reish Lakish's wife, came crying to Rabbi Yochanan, begging that he pray for Reish Lakish's recovery. And she said to him, do this for the sake of my children, so that they should have a father. Apparently the quarrel was really heated because Rabbi Yochanan answered his sister with a line from Jeremiah 49:11, leave your fatherless children, I will rear them. Meaning I will take care of them, or God will take care of them. She said to them, well, then do it for the sake of my widowhood, that I should not become a widow. He said to her the rest of the verse, and let your widows trust in me. He's not moved to try to intercede on Resh Lakish's behalf and pray for him to recover. He was still in the heat of his anger, apparently. Ultimately, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Resh Lakish, died. Rabbi Yochanan was sorely pained. Now he regrets how this whole thing went down. He was emotionally distraught. The rabbis said to the rabbis said to each other, who will go and calm Rabbi Yochanan's mind and comfort him over this loss, right? It was his sister that was begging him, I don't want to lose my husband, I don't want my children to lose their father. But now that he's gone, it's Rabbi Yochanan who is unconsolable as a mourner. They said, let Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat go, as his statements are sharp, i.e. he is clever, and he will be able to serve as a substitute for Reish Lakish, as a study partner with Rabbi Yochanan, right? So they put forward their sharpest guy, right? Why is Rabbi Yochanan so unconsolable? Because he lost his study partner. Okay, so they send Rabbi Elazar ben Padat. He went and sat before Rabbi Yochanan. With regard to every matter that Rabbi Yochanan would say, Rabbi Elazar ben Padat would say to him, there is a ruling which is taught in a baraisa that supports your opinion, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, are you comparable to Ben Lakish, right? To Reish Lakish? In my discussions with Ben Lakish, right? He's calling him the son of Lakish now. In my discussions with Ben Lakish, when I would state a matter, he would raise 24 difficulties against me in an attempt to disprove my claim. And I would answer him with 24 answers. And the law, the halacha, by itself would become broadened and clarified. As a result of these debates, the law became clearer, more understandable, and reaching into more different areas, more different examples, so we understand how the law applies, so that everyone could understand it better as a result of these famous debates between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish. I don't need a yes man telling me that my rulings are all correct. I know they're correct. I need somebody to challenge me. And yet you say to me, there is a ruling which is taught in a baraisa that supports your opinion. Do I not know that what I say is good? Being rebutted by Resh Lakish served a purpose. Your bringing proof of my statements does not serve a purpose. Rabbi Yochanan went around rending his clothing, weeping, and saying, where are you, Ben Lakish? Where are you, Ben Lakish? Rabbi Yochanan screamed until his mind was taken from him. He went insane. The rabbis prayed and requested for God to have mercy on him. And Rabbi Yochanan passed away. Now we're on page 84b. After this digression, the Gemara returns to the story of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. We were talking about his stories. And although, right, remember, he was the one who was tasked, right, by the Persians, I believe, not the Romans, with catching thieves, right? They made it his, because he had a logical way to understand, who are the people that were up all night stealing and don't have a good explanation for why they were up all night and they're falling asleep in a tavern during the day. And that was a good way to, identify thieves. But Elazar, the son of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was very worried, right? That, okay, he's using this logic to catch these people, but what if he ends up turning over somebody to the authorities who isn't a thief? And we have a prohibition in Jewish law to turn over, you're not permitted to turn over a Jew to non-Jewish authorities, but there's a bunch of exceptions to that, right? If he is a danger to society, then you do it, right? And so there's a bunch of associated exceptions like that. At any rate, this was Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, that we were talking about yesterday. So he did a test, right? He did a test. He had himself sedated. He was also very fat, and he had a bunch of his innards, the fat from his belly, taken out in a surgery to see if it would putrefy. Because if it didn't putrefy, that would prove that he was so righteous, that his fat would not putrefy when removed from his body. And therefore, all these people that he was identifying as thieves and turning over to the authorities, he wasn't making mistakes. That's why he needed to know that. And although his flesh did not putrefy, even so, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, still did not rely on his own opinion, as he was worried that he may have erred in one of his decisions in turning over thieves. So he accepted afflictions upon himself as atonement for his possible sins. He didn't even know if he had committed a sin or done something wrong, but he accepted afflictions on himself to make an atonement, just to get his, level of righteousness as high as it could possibly be, to atone for anything that he might have done wrong, because it wasn't like just so much about he wanted to be righteous before God. It was that as a judge, as a guy tasked with this job of turning thieves over to the Persians, he needed to know that he was so righteous that he wouldn't make mistakes on behalf of the people. So he accepted afflictions upon himself as an atonement for his possible sins. At night, his attendants would spread 60 felt bed coverings for him, and in the morning, despite the bed coverings, they would remove 60 basins of blood and pus from underneath him. In other words, he sort of prayed that his body would be afflicted as an atonement to make sure that any degree of unrighteousness was out of him. Right, and so sort of miraculously, he was granted this kind of suffering in this world, just so that his soul would be utterly righteous, and any decisions that he made would be guaranteed to be the right decision on behalf of the community. Right, and so he's really suffering. It's like pus and blood is oozing out of the sores on his body. This is what would happen every night. And then the following day, meaning every morning, his wife would prepare for him 60 types of relish made from figs, and he would eat them and become healthy. Now, his wife, concerned for his health, would not allow him to go to the study hall so that the rabbis would not push him beyond his limits. In the evening, he would say to his pains, right, to the sores on his body, to the afflictions that he had accepted upon himself, he would speak to his bodily afflictions. My brothers and my friends, come. In the morning, he would say to them, go away due to the dereliction of Torah study that you caused me, right? So he accepted that he would suffer every night, but then he would get better in the morning so that he could study Torah. One day, his wife heard him inviting his pains. Must have been at night. She said to him, you are bringing the pains upon yourself. You have diminished the money of my father's home, right, her inheritance, due to the costs of treating your self-imposed afflictions. And she rebelled against him, and she went back to her father's home. And Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was left with no one to care for him, right? She was fed up with a guy who's bringing these pains on himself that she has to spend so much time and energy healing every morning. So meanwhile, there were these 60 sailors who came and entered to visit Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. These were sailors who had come on sort of on a pilgrimage to meet Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. And they brought him 60 servants, each bearing 60 purses of money, and prepared him 60 types of relish, and he ate them. And when they encountered trouble at sea, why were they here? Why did they come on this pilgrimage? Because they had encountered trouble at sea. In other words, they were caught in a storm and the ship was going to sink. And these sailors had prayed to be saved in the merit of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. And they were saved. Right? God saved them in the merit of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. So upon returning to dry land, they came to this sage to present gifts to him since they had prayed to God that they would be saved in his merit. So one day, the wife of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, said to her daughter, right? She had left him, right? But now she says to her daughter, go and check on your father and see what he is doing now. The daughter came to her father, who said to her, go and tell your mother that ours is greater than theirs. Meaning, my current financial status, because of the gifts from these sailors, is greater than that of your father's household. His wife came from a rich, her dad was well-to-do. So Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, read this verse about himself, Proverbs 31:14. This is from Eshes Ha'il. We say this on Friday nights. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. Right? That he received all this food and wealth and healing from those sailors. As he was unhindered by his wife from going to the study hall, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, ate and drank and became healthy, and he went out to the study hall and learned and taught Torah. The students brought 60 questionable samples of blood before him for inspection to determine whether or not they were menstrual blood, right? So when women find some spotting, some bleeding, spotting, when it's not the time of their menses. So there's a question, what kind of blood is that? Is it menstrual blood, which would mean that they're tameh, and the wives and their husbands are not permitted to each other? Or is it some other kind of blood, that might have come from a mosquito bite or, who knows what? But it is not evidence of any kind of menstruation, and the wives and their husbands remain permitted to each other, right? So that's something that Orthodox women will, even today, when there's a spotting and they're not quite sure what it is, will take it to a rav, to a rabbi, and say, is it permitted? And he will ask questions about where did you find it, how did you find it, how long ago did you find it, etc. And they will find out, because remember, already, if she has a regular monthly cycle, so there's 1 week, of flow when they're not permitted to each other, and then 7 clean days that you have to count, then she goes to mikvah, and then they have date night, right? And so more or less, half the month they're prohibited to each other, and half the month they're permitted to each other. So if during the time they're permitted to each other, something comes up and they're not permitted to each other, so then they're not permitted to each other very much that particular month. All right, so that could interfere with making babies, right? That's the point. So what's happening? So they brought him these samples of blood for inspection, and he said all of them are ritually pure. None of this is menstrual blood, and these women are permitted to their husbands. The rabbis of the academy were murmuring about Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and saying, can it enter your mind that there is not one uncertain sample, even uncertain, let alone for sure it's menstrual blood? He's not even uncertain about any of them. All of them, he looked at them, he said, nope, none of these are menstrual blood. All of these women are permitted to their husbands. Can't be 60 samples. At least one, some of them had to be menstrual, or at least some of them had to create a doubt. So if you're not sure, you say prohibited because out of doubt. How could he be so certain that all of them are permitted? And that's why they were murmuring about him. Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, said to them, if the law is in accordance with my ruling, let all the children born from these 60 women be males. And if not, let there be one female among them, and that will prove that I'm wrong. And it turned out that all of the children were males, and they were all named Elazar in his name. Obviously, a miracle was performed to show that Rabbi Elazar was correct. A little bit reminiscent of that story with the oven of Achnai and Rabbi Eliezer. He said, if I'm right, if the law accords with my ruling, let these miracles be performed, the trees moving, the river flowing backward, and eventually a voice from heaven. So here, there was another miracle performed, right? That all these 60 samples that he ruled permitted, he said, if I'm right, let them all be males, and they were all males. Now, it is taught in a Baraisa that Rebbi, right, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, lamented and said concerning the wife of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, how much procreation has this evil woman prevented from the Jewish people? She caused women not to have children because she prevented her husband from going to the study hall and rendering his halachic rulings, right? He was sure other people just didn't have his kind of knowledge of that, that issue of Jewish law, that area of Jewish law. And since they weren't so sure, they would, render a lot of women prohibited to their husbands that month. And, maybe a bunch of babies weren't born because of it. And that's what Rebbi is commenting on, because remember that Rabbi Elazar's wife, because of all his afflictions, she would say, you're not healthy, you're not well, you can't go to the study hall today. And so she kept him from going to the study hall a bunch of times, and, with this result. As Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was dying, okay, he accepted these afflictions upon himself for years. He would suffer at night, then he would get better, but, maybe it shortened his life, all that suffering. All right, cut forward some time, and now he's dying. As he was dying, he said to his wife, I know that the rabbis are angry at me for arresting several thieves who are their relatives, right? Not because they weren't thieves. They were thieves. He knows he's right. He was always right to begin with, and plus he suffered all these afflictions. But fact of the matter is he turned over these thieves to the non-Jewish authorities, and some of these thieves were relatives of rabbis, right? So they had extra incentive to say, what are you doing? You can't turn these people over to the Gentiles because the Gentiles will execute them. We don't execute somebody for being a thief. They do. How can you do this? So he says, I know that the rabbis are angry at me for arresting several thieves who are their relatives, and therefore they will not tend to my burial properly. So when I die, lay me in my attic and do not be afraid of me. I do not fear that anything will happen to my corpse. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani said, Rabbi Yonason's mother told me that the wife of Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, told her, I laid him in the attic for no less than 18 years and no more than 22 years. She's not sure exactly how long he was up there, but it was some period of time between 18 and 22 years. Now, the story on its face is that this corpse lay in an attic and somehow didn't decompose because of the merit of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. It preserved him, just as it preserved his fat from putrefying, it preserved his corpse. Others say that, no, he was in a near coma-like state, but he wasn't actually dead. Let's see. His wife continued, when I would go up to the attic, I would check his hair, and when a hair would fall out from his head, blood would come and appear in its place, i.e. his corpse did not decompose. One day I saw a worm emerging from his ear, and I became very distressed that perhaps his corpse had begun to decompose. But my husband appeared to me in a dream and said to me, it is no matter for concern. Rather, this is a consequence of a sin of mine, as one day I heard a Torah scholar being insulted, and I did not protest as I should have. Therefore, I received this punishment in my ear, measure for measure. During this period, when two people would come for adjudication of a dispute, they would stand by the doorway to the home of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and one litigant would state his side of the matter, and the other litigant would state his side of the matter, and a voice would issue forth from his attic saying, so-and-so you are guilty, so-and-so you are innocent. He's giving halachic rulings even when he's allegedly dead. The Gemara relates, one day the wife of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was quarreling with a neighbor. The neighbor said to her, as a curse, this woman should be like her husband, who was not buried. When word spread that Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was dead and not buried, the rabbis said, this much, i.e., now that the matter is known, to continue in this state is certainly not proper conduct. And they decided to bury him once and for all. Now, there are those who say that the sages found out that Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, had not been buried when Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, his father, appeared to them in a dream and said to them, I have a single fledgling among you, i.e., I have one son, and he is among you, and you do not wish to bring it to me by burying him next to me. Why are you stopping, him coming into this world by having a proper burial? Consequently, the sages went to tend to his burial. Now, the residents of Akbaria, the town where the corpse of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was resting, did not allow them to bury the body, as they realized that all the years that the body of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was resting in that attic, no wild beast had entered their town. And the townspeople attributed this phenomenon to his merit, and they did not want to lose that protection. So one day, which was Erev Yom Kippur, right, the afternoon before Yom Kippur, everyone in the town was preoccupied with preparations for Yom Kippur. So the rabbi sent a message to the residents of the adjacent town of Biri, instructing them to help move the body of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, from the attic, and they removed his bier, B-I-E-R, his bier, and brought it to his father's burial cave. And they found a serpent that had placed its tail in its mouth and completely encircled the entrance to the cave, denying them access. And they said to it, serpent, serpent, open your mouth to allow a son to enter and be next to his father. And the serpent opened its mouth for them and uncoiled, and they buried Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, alongside his father, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. who we're going to be celebrating. He's very much associated with Lag BaOmer, which is Sunday. The Gemara continues. After this incident, Rebbi, right, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rebbi, sent a messenger to speak with the wife of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and proposed marriage to her, right? She was the wife of this illustrious sage, and so now he's proposing that he would marry the widow. She sent a message to him in response, shall a vessel used by someone sacred, meaning Rabbi Elazar, be used by someone who is, relative to him, profane? Now, she's calling Rebbi profane when compared to Rabbi Elazar. Okay, well, Rebbi, is one of the greatest sages in history. He is the one who redacted the Mishna, and caused it to be written down because there was so much persecution of the sages by the Romans. So to call Rebbi profane, I mean, that's, must be that she really loved Rabbi Elazar, and she's like, she doesn't really want to marry Rebbi. So there, in Eretz Yisrael, right, in the land of Israel where these guys all live, they say that she used a colloquial adage, in the location where the master of the house hangs his sword, shall the contemptible shepherd hang his basket? She's not going to, lower herself by marrying Rebbi, even though Rebbi is so illustrious, after having been married to Rabbi Elazar. Rebbi sent the message back to her, okay, granted that in Torah he was greater than I, but was he greater than I in pious deeds? And she sent the message back to him, whether he was greater than you in Torah, I don't know, right? She wasn't in the study hall. But I do know that he was greater than you in pious deeds, as he accepted afflictions upon himself, right? He prayed to have all that suffering, that nightly suffering, in order to purify his soul so that he could be confident that when he was sending thieves, to their consequences, that he was, making right choices, and he accepted all this suffering for that reason. So that's pretty pious. The Gemara asks, with regard to Torah knowledge, what is the event that demonstrated the superiority of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, over Rebbi? I mean, Rebbi admitted that, okay, Rabbi Elazar was greater than me in Torah. So what demonstrated this? And the Gemara answers, when Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha, the leading sages of that generation, were sitting on benches. This is the previous generation. This is when Rebbi and Rabbi Elazar were young. So when Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha were sitting on benches teaching Torah along with the other sages, the youthful Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and Rebbi would sit before them on the ground out of respect. Now, these two young students would engage in discussions with the sages in which they would raise difficulties and answer them brilliantly. Now, seeing that the young scholars were so brilliant, the leading sages of that previous generation said, from their waters we drink, i.e., we are learning from them. And they are the ones sitting on the ground. So benches were brought in for Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and for Rebbi. And they were promoted to sit alongside the other sages. So they were both promoted. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said to the other sages present, I have a single fledgling among you, meaning Rebbi, right? So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel was the Nasi, the head of the Sanhedrin, and Rebbi was his son, right? And eventually Rebbi became the Nasi also, but at this point he's the son of the Nasi. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is saying, I have a single fledgling among you, and you are seeking to take it away from me. What? How are they seeking to take him away? By promoting my son to such a prestigious position at such a young age, his chances of being adversely affected by the evil eye are greatly increased. People will be so young, have such a position of honor, and that could actually shorten his life. So they demoted Rebbi to sit on the ground at his father's request. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha said to the sages, should one who has a father to care for him, i.e. Rebbi, be demoted so that he may live, while the other one who does not have a father to care for him, meaning Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, because Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, I guess, had passed away by this time, should he be demoted? He has no one to care for him? should be allowed to die, right? In other words, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel spoke up on behalf of Rebbi, said, don't promote him at such a young age. That could cause him to have his life shortened. So they demoted him. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was already dead, so no one spoke in that manner about demoting Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. And so, he was left up on those benches. But then they're like, well, no, we should accord him the same favor, meaning to demote him in order to save his life, so to speak. So they demoted him. The sages demoted Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, but they didn't explain to him why they were demoting him. This is like one of those misunderstandings in a sitcom where people get offended because they don't know what's really going on. I mean, somebody should have told him why they demoted him, but they didn't. Since they didn't tell him, and he had simply been demoted, he became offended. And he said to them, because in matters of holiness, we elevate and we don't bring down, right? That's generally a principle that if you elevate someone because of their righteousness and Torah learning, you wouldn't demote them, certainly without explanation. And since no one explained it to him, he was offended. He became offended and he said to them, you're equating Rebbi to me? So they demoted Rebbi, and he's saying, well, okay, they must have demoted me just because they demoted Rebbi and like we came as a pair. But, okay, I don't know why you demoted him, but I'm not the same as him. You didn't, why are you demoting me just because you're demoting him? And that offended Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. As a result of that incident, the relationship of Rabbi Elazar and the son of Rabbi Shimon with Rebbi changed, right? These two young guys who were sort of the young, proteges, the young promising guys who were friends with each other. Now that one was demoted by his father to save his life so he wouldn't incur the evil eye, and the other one was demoted for the same reason, but nobody explained that to him, and they ended up, having it became weird between them, and there was a rift, a big rift. Up until that day, when Rebbi would state a matter of Torah, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, would support him by citing proofs for his opinion. But from this point forward, when they were discussing a subject and Rebbi would say, I have an argument to respond, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, would preempt him by saying to him, such and such is what you have to respond, and this is the refutation to your claim. Right? In other words, Rabbi Elazar had been polite up until now, but at this point he sort of took the gloves off and he could see through Rebbi's arguments. Rebbi was on such a high level, but Rabbi Elazar, higher level, right? And that makes sense because remember who he was. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right, who ends up being credited with writing the Zohar, right, kind of the creator of Jewish mysticism, of Kabbalah. It was because he had to flee from the Roman authorities in another colorful story, and he ended up hiding in a cave for 12 years with his son, Rabbi Elazar, like learning night and day, doing nothing but learning in that cave for 12 years. And all these like secrets of the universe, mystical secrets of the universe ended up being revealed to them, right? So it's not that surprising that Rabbi Elazar was just on a whole different plane than everybody else. So yeah, in Torah, he was way superior to Rebbi, even though Rebbi was like very top. Rabbi Elazar was just on a whole other level because of that experience of 12 years in the cave. And so now, before they had been very polite and encouraged Rebbi, now he was just like, okay, this is what you're going to say, and this is why you're wrong, right? And Rebbi was just like, what's he going to say? Like, the guy could see through him. So, such and such is what you're going to say, and this is the refutation of what you're going to say. Now that you have asked these questions, you have surrounded us with bundles of refutations that have no substance, i.e., you have forced us to give unnecessary answers. Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, would anticipate Rebbi's comments and immediately dismiss them as having no value. Not a good way to treat your fellow sage. Rebbi became offended. He came and told his father what had transpired. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, after all, his father is the Nasi, the head of the Sanhedrin, the leading Torahite of that generation. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said to him, my son, do not let his actions offend offend you, as he is a lion, the son of a lion, and you are a lion, the son of a fox. Rabbi Elazar's father, Rabbi Shimon, was a renowned sage, and therefore Rabbi Elazar's sageness, is not surprising. In any event, this incident demonstrates the superiority of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, to Rebbi with regard to knowledge of Torah. Also, the humility of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who said, well, he's the lion, the son of a lion. My son, you're just a lion, the son of a fox. I'm just a fox compared to these other lions. Yeah, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel was a lion also, but very humble. The Gemara concludes, this incident is the background to a statement which Rebbi said. There are 3 prototypical modest people, and they are father, right, my father, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, the sons of Betera, and Jonathan, the son of King Saul. And the Gemara discusses each case. Now we're just getting a little bit of a head start on page 85. We're on 85a. Why are these people known as modest? The incident involving the modesty of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is that what we just said, as he referred to himself modestly as a fox. The sons of Betera were exceptionally modest as they served in the position of Nasi, and yet they abdicated their positions in favor of Hillel when he emigrated from Babylonia to Eretz Yisrael. That was when the Second Temple was still standing. As the master said, the sons of Betera, upon recognizing that Hillel was a superior expert in matters of Jewish law, seated him at the head and appointed him Nasi over them. They said it's only about the Torah, it's not about pride or position or anything. He's better than us, he knows more Torah than us, he's going to be the head. That's humility and putting Torah first. And regarding Jonathan, the son of King Saul, why do we say that he was modest? As he said to David, and you shall be king over Israel, and I shall be second to you. He recognized that his father was not going to be able to hold on to the throne, and that he himself was not as fit to be the king of Israel as David was. Jonathan could recognize that. And in his friendship with David, he put David first, even though that meant that he was the heir apparent to the throne. But he said, I'm not going to try to take that throne. It's your throne. You deserve that throne. The Gemara asks, from where do we know that the aforementioned men were truly modest? Perhaps Jonathan, the son of Saul, relinquished his rights to the kingship not due to modesty, but because he saw that the world, i.e. the masses, were drawn to David. And he felt that he had no other recourse. If he tried to take the throne, the people would rise up against him. With regard to the sons of Betera also, perhaps they abdicated only because they saw that Hillel was greater than they, as he was able to answer questions that they could not resolve. And the Gemara adds, but Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, he certainly was truly a modest individual, since he referred to himself as a fox, compared to Shimon ben Yochai, who was a lion. And that's where that discussion ends. The Gemara returns to the previous incident when he heard that the greatness of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was due to his suffering. Rebbi said to himself, okay, so apparently afflictions are precious. So he accepted upon himself 13 years of afflictions. 6 years of stones in the kidneys, and 7 years of scurvy. And some say it was 7 years of stones in the kidneys and 6 years of scurvy. Oh. And the Gemara relates, the stableman of the house of Rebbi was wealthier than King Shapur of Persia due to Rebbi's abundant livestock. Rebbi was fabulously wealthy. When the stableman would place fodder before the livestock, the sound of their lowing, right, the cows lowing for their food, would travel a distance of 3 miles. And he would calculate the right moment so that he would place the fodder before the animals at precisely that time when Rebbi entered the bathroom, so that the lowing of the animals would drown out Rebbi's screams of pain, right? Those kidney stones. But even so, Rebbi's voice was so loud that it overcame the sound of the livestock, and even sailors heard it out at sea, because he had accepted these afflictions upon himself to purify his soul in this world. Therefore, he could, when he gave rulings, he could be confident that they would be right. And the Gemara says, but even so, the afflictions of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, were greater than the afflictions of Rebbi. And the reason is that whereas the afflictions of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, came upon him out of love and left him out of love, i.e., they were solely the result of his own request, not because he deserved them, those of Rebbi came upon him due to an incident and left him due to another incident. It wasn't because he prayed to have afflictions just so that he could be more elevated in Torah. He actually was being punished somewhat, maybe a much worse punishment than he deserved, but there was something that he did that was not so righteous. And what was it? The Gemara stated that Rebbi's suffering came upon him due to an incident. What was the incident? The Gemara says, there was a certain calf that was being led to slaughter. And the calf went and hung its head on the corner of Rebbi's garment and was weeping. The calf knew it was going to be slaughtered and was trying to avoid that fate. And Rebbi said to it, go, as you were created for this purpose. Right? Go be slaughtered. You were created, to be food. And at that moment it was said in heaven, since he was not compassionate toward the calf, let afflictions come upon him. Right? When you're at that level, such a high level of being a sage, even the slightest, malfeasance can lead to great punishment, right? I mean, it's unimaginable that he wouldn't have had compassion on a person that was coming to him with his needs. But, he wasn't so compassionate with this calf, and they noticed in heaven. And the Gemara said that his afflictions left him because of an incident. So what was that incident? One day, the maidservant of Rebbi was sweeping his house, and there were young weasels lying about, and she was in the process of sweeping them out. And Rebbi said to her, let the weasels be. As it is written, the Lord is good to all. His mercies are over all his works. And then they said in heaven, since he was compassionate, we shall be compassionate with him. And that was the end of his, suffering and afflictions. And the Gemara relates, during all the years, and now I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. During all the years of the suffering of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, no one died prematurely, as his afflictions atoned for the entire generation. During all the years of the suffering of Rebbi, the world did not require any rain, as the moisture of the dew was sufficient, right? Because him having those afflictions elevated the holiness of the whole world. As Rabbah bar Rav Shelah said, a day of rain is as difficult as a day of judgment due to the damage that storms and flooding can cause. And the Maimar said, were it not for the fact that rain is needed by people, the sages would pray for mercy and annul it due to the nuisances of rain. And even so, despite the fact that there was no rain all those years, when a radish was uprooted from its row in the field, there remained in its place a hole filled with water due to all the moisture in the earth, right? In other words, the world was totally fertile without rainstorms, but the ground was always moist, and, it was just one of those periods. It was a wonderful period of history where everyone was prosperous. And it was due to the afflictions that Rebbi, was taking upon himself. There was an incident that caused him to have afflictions, but not at the level that he was suffering. And that was a merit to him that the whole world benefited from. That's what I've got for us today. So a few questions. Jonathan, just like the Torah, the context is important, i.e., why did he put this story here? So I was looking for the answer. Seems like just a page or two ago we learned, don't embarrass anyone. This is likened to killing. Don't bring up the past of a convert or the Baal Tshuva, as I mentioned earlier. And don't turn in your fellow Jew. The last one more recently, because it seems that this is what Yochanan did. I think it seems like this is a story pointing to all those items. I don't know about turning in your fellow Jew. I wouldn't say that Yochanan did that, but that's definitely what Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was doing, right? So there you go. Joseph. So yes, I agree. So why include these stories now? It's to illustrate. Perhaps that's another reason why these guys had these, severe afflictions. Yeah, and they knew that they were doing it. It wasn't like it was a mystery to them. But they needed, because of their position of leadership and everyone depending on them to give true and just rulings, They needed to know that they were at a level of righteousness where they wouldn't make mistakes. And so that was what motivated them to have these terrible afflictions, to elevate their souls and be able to rule righteously. Joseph, did they have any sort of police force, like we were discussing yesterday, for weeding out the wicked? That's a really good question. I think that, in Persia, where the exarch, was very close to the monarchy, they actually had more enforcement power in Bava, right? In the Babylonian Jewish community in Persia. Under Rome, I don't know that they had much enforcement ability. Rome was pressing their thumb down on the Jewish people, and I don't know that they would have allowed them to have enforcers, so to speak. So really, the main, sort of enforcement mechanism that they had was the threat of excommunication. When he was turning thieves over, to the Persian authority because he'd been ordered to do that, and another aspect of this is if he hadn't done it, they would appoint some other Jew to do it, and if no Jew would do it, then they would punish the Jewish community. So some Jew had to have that job. And if some Jew had to have that job, obviously you want somebody as righteous as Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, to be that person. That's an aspect we haven't discussed, but I would add that. Bill, I hate to say it, but I have a hard time feeling sorry for Rabbi Yochanan. Did he intend his bringing up Ben Lakish's past as a way of inspiring the other sages? Maybe, but the road to Gehenna is paved with good intentions, and the Torah is extremely clear on the prohibition for a reason. That Ben Lakish grew cross and said something to insult Yochanan may not have been prudent, but really, when Yochanan's sister begged him to do something as simple as praying for her husband, his student and friend, and he didn't, what I would like to believe, I agree with you, Bill. I mean, that was very hard for me to read. I would like to believe that there's more to the story than is written here, because Yochanan was so righteous. Had he just become, old and full of himself and susceptible to that kind of misbehavior, I would like to believe that there was more going on and there's facts that are missing here. But Bill continues, I suppose that's where the last of my sympathy dries up. What did he expect to happen? He knew he was a sage. He knew he had the spiritual power that his anger could wound Lakish physically. And he chose the path that led to Lakish's death. I think it's telling that when the rabbis beg God for mercy for him, God doesn't heal Yochanan, God takes him away. God is perfectly merciful and perfectly just. Very good. Sharon said, this practice gives rise to the practice of responsa. I'm not sure what you were responding to at that point. But the idea of responsa, right, is issuing halachic rulings. And I guess the process, right, maybe you're talking about the process of sages kind of sharpening each other to make sure that, when they issue a ruling, it has sort of withstood the test of being challenged, as opposed to, this is what I say, and everybody says, you're right. And then they issue the ruling, and it wasn't sharpened enough. But I'm not sure if that's what you were talking about. Okay, Tom says, with regard to the word Sagacity, hard G. Okay, does hard G mean G or J? I don't know. So that doesn't help me. Is it sagacity or sagacity? So I'd rather say sageness. That's what I've got for us today. I'm going to look this up and make sure I can know how to pronounce it. But with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Friday at the regular Friday time, noon Pacific. Have a good night.